Dadurch wird das Spiel so viel kompetitiver und du spielst halt nicht einfach nur irgendeinen cheesy Stuff, sondern du spielst halt eigentlich immer nur Stuff, der halt gut funktioniert. Okay, let's go! Genau, nicht auf Raten. Es ist so viel besser. Ich wäre so drin, Ober. Ich würde den auch nur spielen, ja.
Mirror armor, like we mentioned, being able to at least scare off the use of the breaking swipe here, but being able to have
ja, es geht nur um die Veranstaltung, aber es sind halt sehr viel mehr Plätze offen, weißt du? Also es gibt mehr zu gewinnen und es sind mehr Plätze offen für Teilnehmer. Und du kriegst halt viel mehr Championship Points und alles. Aber jeder kann rein. Warum läuft da keine Musik? Der hat bei Musik Non ausgewählt, kann das sein? Der hat keine Musik ausgewählt. Als ob das erlaubt ist.
It looks like the Avocado will be attacking into this. Oh, and it just misses the KO there, so not quite enough to be able to finish the job off. Scale shot with its loaded dice item coming into fruition here. Not quite enough to pick up a KO barring any sort of critical hits, but not actually fully committing and hitting all 5 of its hits. But
nee, ich muss jetzt Musik anmachen. Ich fühl's gar nicht.
Surely it is enough to be able to outpace this gouging fire.
That's a huge survival here from the Corviknight, just barely hanging on and getting that tailwind off. So pivotal for this next turn as well, because now it allows Corviknight to get an attack off into potentially the Ogerpon. You can go for a Brave Bird there, potentially pick up the knockout. You have to be careful around the spiky shield, of course, but it does open the door for the Dragonite to get some use, especially into that gouging fire, that it is going to be susceptible to those scale shots.
Yeah, and it's a bit tough.
Es gibt leider kein... Das gibt einen Spectator-Mode im Dings, im Lokalen.
The water terrestrialization Ivy Cudgel is enough to pick up the KO without any sort of terrestrializations, but we already see Pokémon going on the redirection approach right now, just wanting to at least avoid gouging fire going down.
Viel besser.
Won't matter, as the 4-hit coverage would have been enough to pick up the KO.
Yeah, it's a nice way to get rid of the Ogerpon here, and it does give the little bit of protection to that gouging fire here. Already damaged Ogerpon. The terrestrialization for Renzo's now gone though, so that's something to consider going forward, especially if you are Len. Dragonite taking another defense drop, but again another speed boost as well. So speed creeping, the breaking swipe coming out, not quite enough. But will activate that mirror armor ability, and now the mirror armor will go back onto the gouging fire.
Yeah, bringing it now down to -1
ich bin sowieso für Len.
We hadn't seen a Howl activation previously either.
Okidogi ist halt strong, weil halt E-Speed blocken kann. Aber wobei ist schneller, ne?
We saw how much damage it took
aber er hat
from
Sucker
the
Punch auf
swipe
links.
because of the -2 in its defense, but Chien-Pao already brings such a huge problem to Len's current flowchart at the point, because it has access to priority. It does directly threaten a one-hit KO onto the Garchomp, if of course it can connect. But the most important thing is it's forcing Len to make more of a direct aggressive approach to play.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. I think you've got to look at the Dragonites here, and you've got to be careful going for the Sucker Punch as well if you are the Chien-Pao.
It's crazy.
The Dragonite, because the extreme speed's there, but not going to see that. We have the Burning Bulwark coming out from the Gouging Fire. It is going to protect itself for this turn, as well as that Chien-Pao. Just wanting to scout out what Len is trying to do this turn.
Yeah, it's a really nice scout here, as you do have a potential of picking up a burn, as it seems is the case.
Ja, das ist
Len's
swag.
not going to be mighty happy.
Hä, warum nicht E-Speed auf?
Of course, it will be having its
Chien-Pao.
damage output in
War der Terra Ghost?
Garchomp
Nee, war Stella.
Really nice synergy, and I feel
warum nicht E-Speed auf Chien-Pao?
Sort of archetype pairing we've seen in the past. Maybe not Dragonite, maybe it was a Salamence by the side in the good old days next to that Garchomp, but at this point, there's a lot that Len has to try to bring to the fore. He does have a final Pokemon that hasn't been revealed, but at the moment, Renzo has some really good momentum availability on his side.
Yeah, and you've got to consider as well that Len still has Terastallization at his disposal. So the Garchomp is threatened from the Chen Pao at the moment, but could go for that Terastallization into that Steel type. It's pretty risky in front of the Gouging Fire because if Renzo calls that, then goes with a Heat Crash into that slot, you could potentially see yourself at a bit of a detriment and maybe even knocked out depending on the damage output here. But we are going to see it. Costa, Terastallization, Garchomp going for that Steel
Aber
type.
muss auf den Sash von Chen Pao.
Wants to be able to at least survive.
No
priority coming out from this Chen Pao that could have opted to go for the Sucker Punch there. Scale Shot targeting down the Gouging Fire, but due to the burn, not enough to pick up the KO. If it wasn't in play, it would have surely been able to with that range. So Dragonite just waiting to get KO'd here. Len not wanting to try to risk any safe switch outs there. Garchomp actually moving first. Thanks, of course, to being able to have the Tailwind on its side. Picking up the KO on the Gouging Fire, though, is so crucial, especially with this defensive switch-up of no longer being able to be susceptible to an Icicle Crash KO.
Yeah, that is a huge turn here from
hier können wir, warte.
Earthquake off, removing that fire threat after going for that Steel Terastallization. Not any risk anymore. The Icicle Crash coming out. Garchomp easily able to take that, and the Dragonite finally going down. I think probably a turn
Tailwind aufhört.
Have seen what may come out in the back to
Was sein letztes Mon?
Die Night nicht ausgegraut. The Okadogi going to be the choice from Renzo, and this is going to be an interesting end to this game. And
okay, ja.
Moonges has that potential of redirection,
EQ, Rage Powder.
Len can really dive into utilizing.
Das sollte G sein.
We know it does have Substitute, but now that it is in its Steel Terastallization form, it is susceptible to those fighting type moves. And Okidogi really wants to best place itself right now in just going on the offensive. We know it's Assault Vest, it just wants to pick up the damage where it can, but what Renzo has to take into consideration is any sort of protect play that could come out from either of Len's side.
Not going to see that though. The Amoonguss going straight for the Rage Powder, going to redirect any attacks coming out, and that Icicle Crash going into that slot. Can it take it? It can. Just survive. The Icicle Crash and the Earthquake coming out. It is going to be enough to pick up the Chen.
Never mind.
Take a huge amount of damage, taking the Amoonguss down with it.
So much damage, but what Len really needed was that KO. Thanks to the Sword of Ruin being in play, it allowed Len to try to take that into consideration. But we see so crucial of a survival there. Okidogi goes ahead and all of a sudden wraps this game one up with the KO onto that Garchomp.
That's
an absolutely
crazy.
Huge end to the game. The Okidogi surviving barely after that Earthquake. You think, can it survive? It does survive. And the Garchomp, unfortunately, taking the Amoonguss down. That's a cost of using the Earthquake. Not quite enough to pick up the knockout there. And Okidogi being the big player here for Renzo to take a lead in this round 5.
And it's a bit tough because I feel like in that situation, if Len didn't go for the Earthquake, is there a scenario where the Garchomp could at least have been able to run away with that game 1? It does have the potential of going for the substitute. We know that it needs to get an Earthquake off at some point in order to hopefully pick up the KO onto the Okidogi, but you want the Sword of Ruin to still be available. So it sort of forces Len into a situation where he feels like he has to go on the immediate offensive.
Dass sie zu dem jetzt gesagt haben, Bro, wähl mal bitte eine Musik aus.
To try and pick up that win con.
Yeah, you can see the line of thought from both players here. I mean, there's a big survival here from the Corviknight. I think this was a huge turn in this game here with the double up into that Corviknight. You can see how useful that Citrus Berry is here, taking the Heat Crash and then the Ivy Cudgel as well on top of that. Just barely hanging on to allow that Tailwind to be set up and then put Len into a position where he was able to really capitalize with that speed control going forward. The Dragonite, again, surviving here, that breaking swipe. And taking an attack drop, but I think at this point, really in a good position with that additional speed boost to start really disrupting things on Renzo's side of the field. But he didn't panic at this stage. I think he really was quite composed throughout this game and took it right down to the wire, as we are seeing here with the Garchomp when it did come onto the field and was able to get rid of that Gouging Fire. But the Dragonite getting caught with that Burning Bulwark, and that probably a little bit of to detriment on Len's side. Yeah,
I think so. And I was trying to think if there's a way right now where perhaps instead of going for Earthquake and picking up a KO on your own Amoonguss, you could try to go for Dragon Claw into the Okidogi and force an Earthquake to come out the following turn in order to guarantee pick up that additional chip required onto the Okidogi, because it would have just been focusing Drain Punch into the Amoonguss, right?
Yeah, the other option there would have been maybe protect the Garchomp, try and get a spore off into the Okidogi, knowing that it is Assault Vest, but it's risky because the double up could come into that slot.
But of course, we do have our Game 2 leads from both trainers. Len going for the same strategy as Game 1, Corviknight and Dragonite versus the
selbes Team.
and Ogerpon switch-up.
Der hat wieder keine Musik ausgewählt.
Maybe prioritizing Renzo, the Gouging Fire for later on in this game, knowing how useful it can be in this matchup, especially with those breaking swipes, especially if the Corviknight gets into a position where it can get the Tailwind up. You know that the double up is not enough, so maybe going down a different route this game. Go for that Icicle Crash, maybe it's a neutral into the Corviknight. Will that, with the sort of Ruin and the double up from the Ogerpon, be enough to pick up the knockout onto the Pokemon before that speed control is able to be set up?
Big
play from the Dragonite, not wanting any sort of business with this GM-Pow on the field for good reason due to the Icicle Crash focus there, but no terrestrialization following through with what we saw in Game 1 from Renzo. Unfortunately for himself, he double slotted into that Dragonite, allowing for a oh-so-free Tailwind setup from this Corviknight.
Yeah,
spiky protect.
Really free turn there for Len, and a really good protect as well at the same time, catching out Lorenzo. Unfortunately for him, now the Tailwind's up and the Corviknight in such a healthy position, going to be able to threaten both the Ogerpon and that Chen-Pao. That's what we're seeing it protect here.
Das Laura sieht wirklich so witzig aus, ne?
Next turn.
Yeah, you surely want to be able to stall out the turns of Tailwind until the later half of the Tailwind turns expire in order to better position yourself and have the speed advantage the subsequent turn after you go for the full damage.
Yeah, and now we are seeing the Brave Bird is going to be doubling into that Chen-Pao, really prioritizing that side of the field. And for good reason as well. You can potentially see the following coming out from the Ogerpon to maybe give Chen-Pao a little bit of room, but also you want to
wen will hier rauswechseln?
Also
kann da nichts rauswechseln
like
in den Chen-Pao-Slot.
Like that Gouging Fire, like the Okidogi that are going to come in, potentially take advantage of that ability later on in this game. So Len really focusing down on that slot. Now the Chen-Pao's pinged. Does Renzo pivot it out for something else?
Weiß ich nicht.
Double up or to keep it on the field, try and get one attack off before it goes down.
I think at this point you really need to be able to be super cautious because this game could go either side depending on which slots you want to be targeting. We do see the Ogerpon opting to go for the terrestrialization. It wants to go for
Terra Follow
full
Me
amount of
into
damage,
Icicle Crash Denied wär's maybe gewesen.
Len does have Tailwind set up. There's no terrestrialization indication from his side of the field. Scale Shot does focus down on GM-Pow. This looks like if it gets all 5 hits, it may be able to just pick up the KO. But it's going to be extremely close and it's going to be
oh my god! Oh my god! Da hat der Fokuscode getriggert.
It may be allowing it room to go for a move.
Okay.
And the Brave Bird coming out, following up into the Chen-Pao, and that Focus Sash, imaginary Focus Sash, not quite enough to make that hold on there, but a huge knockout here for Len. Would have been more preferable to get that knockout with the Scale Shot and then the Brave Bird into the Ogerpon, but the Ogerpon left unscathed here, going for an Ivy Cudgel.
Die Rolls dann wild, ja.
That Ogerpon in the process, activating that Citrus
Genau in Citrus Range, das ist natürlich nice für Len.
Yeah, this is looking really good for Len at this current point. You've still got Tailwind pressure on the field. You've got the Corviknight at a relatively healthy amount of HP where it can avoid a Heat Crash KO from that range. So it's going to be more so how Renzo could try to really amp up the momentum and swing it back to Len's side as the Tailwind now
genau das,
Yeah, and you've got to be careful, I think, with the Gouging Fire on the field now, knowing that Renzo probably wants to
kann einfach Scale Shots in Gouging drücken, oder nicht?
That Burning Bulwark situation again, and have either one of your Pokemon out on the field at the moment burnt, so that's something to keep in mind. Probably maybe target that Ogerpon this turn, but then if that's the thought process, Renzo could maybe pick up on that and not protect the Gouging Fire and start utilizing some of those big threatening attacks, namely that Heat Crash into the Corviknight, try and remove that speed control from Len's side of the field.
But we are going to see a redirection from the Ogerpon, not going on the offensive.
Okay, I guess.
Will likely be able to outspeed this Corviknight, but it's not able to do so with the Dragonite due to the Scale Shot increase.
Ja, das sehe ich mir auch. Ich finde Scale Shot Dien halt actually übertrieben cool. Stell dir mal vor, der steht neben dem Chen-Pao mit Scale Shot. Der One-Shottet einfach dieses Ogerpon.
to maybe act as well the following turn, dependent on what this Corviknight does.
Heat
Crash coming out from the Gouging Fire, and the Corviknight once again hangs on.
It hangs on, it goes for the roost, and it's able to also recover all of that luscious HP it did just lose, as Tailwind does now expire.
Now it is going to be in the position here where it will be threatened by another Heat Crash. Of course, does need to be careful in particular from that Scale Shot that could come out and cause so much damage to it. But you do have the Ogerpon next to it. You do have the Follow Me for that one turn to try and pull away those Scale Shots and get that Heat Crash maybe onto the Corviknight this turn, or take advantage and try and go for a Breaking Swipe, because you can try and lower the damage on that Dragonite, and it has taken
Tailwind ist, glaube ich, noch ein Turn.
as well. So the Breaking
Ist
Swipe,
Tailwind vorbei?
known for a big attacking option, could be enough at this stage to maybe even pick up the knockout on that Dragonite.
It's going to be a bit
Heat Crash,
close, because there is also the option of going for another Heat Crash, hoping that it's a roll and hoping you can pick up a KO onto the Corviknight before it gets a Tailwind set up. But we're going to have to find out, as a Scale Shot, of course, we'll be able to dispatch of this Ogerpon, further increasing this Dragonite's speed to +3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it is getting a bit out of control. Doesn't need to rely on that Tailwind anymore, but does need to be careful because of that defense stat, taking yet another defense drop. But also at the same time, one of the bonuses is a speed boost as well. Heat Crash coming out, and this time is enough to pick up the Corviknight to the
hätte, glaube ich, eben nicht boosten sollen, sondern mit Brave Bird Ogerpon rausnehmen. Das wäre big gewesen.
But we do still have this Dragonite being able to be the fastest thing on the field. Most likely, we're going to have to see, of course, the interaction. But the most crucial thing at this point is, what can Renzo do in order to maybe dispatch off this Dragonite?
Also Roost war es irgendwie nicht
so.
so.
Scenario where, okay, it's very weak in terms of its HP recovery potential, but it does have the Amoongus, which already amplifies that via its redirection.
Yeah, you would say normally in this situation,
Burning Bulwark eigentlich einsetzen. Ja, okay, der stirbt halt einfach am Scale Shot.
The Gouging Fire, you go for the attack into the Dragonite, dispatch of it that way, and then you can go from there. But with the Amoongus, with this Rage Power that we're seeing now, it's going to pull all those attacks to that side of the field, leaving the Dragonite open to go for that Scale Shot into the Gouging Fire.
Der died einfach.
Wobei
reichen 4. Braucht 5.
I'm not sure.
Never mind.
Well, guess what?
Never
now
mind.
I am sure, because we see the critical hit connect. The Gouging Fire is out. It's not going to be able to pick up a Heat Crash KO that it would have really appreciated onto the Amoongus, leaving the Okidogi on its lonesome self, wanting to try to pan out and force a win for the set, but Len is in a really prime position to force a game 3.
Yeah, and the knockoff coming out onto the Amoongus, going to knock off the Rocky Helmet, which is useful, but I mean, at this stage, it's just impossible, really, for Renzo to come back with the Okidogi, and we are going to see the forfeit locked in. The Dragonite, you know, taking all of those defense drops throughout, but, you know, the defense drops don't matter if you're not taking any damage.
Exactly. I think it's really cool to actually see a Dragonite sweep in this sort of approach and method. Scale Shot with loaded dice isn't something that you commonly would be expecting on a Dragonite. So you want to be able to capitalize off of maybe a Choice Band in combination with Chi and Power, let's say, or wanting to
Benny steht 4-1.
Extreme speed.
Und Flo steht auch 3-2. Flo hat auch einen Win Gold. Sammy steht leider 1-4.
You still have extreme speed.
Benny steht 4-1 und Flo ist auf 3-2 hoch. Du steht leider auch 3-2. Aber Benny 4-1 geil. Benny 4-1 ist sehr geil. Sammy leider 1-4, sad.
In a really good way.
Yeah, and I think it really comes back to that turn 1 in the game too, where we
wir
saw Len go for
brauchen mich
that
on
protect
stream.
into the Dragonite and get the free Tailwind up with the Corviknight. Really went unpunished there, and from that point on, Renzo was in a really tough position there. The Ogerpon taking a lot of damage, not really able to stick around as long as we would like it to have done.
Aber dass Flo gewonnen hat, freut mich sehr. 3-2, wichtig.
When it eventually came in after the Chen Pao, you know, mysteriously hung on with that invisible focus sash that it had in his back pocket. But yeah, I think that was the real key turn, and Len didn't really give up.
Flo's Gegner sogar bisher 4-1,
swing from that turn 1, kept it going, closed out the game.
Ausrufezeichen EUIC First Blood.
Onto Lorenzo now to come back, readjust, and see how you can better handle the Dragonite, because that is the big threat going into this match. It's obvious the Corviknight is a threat, but once you are putting so many resources into that side of the field and trying to prevent the Tailwind from going up again, then
Gelb.
you've got the Dragonite to deal with at the same time. It's very difficult. You've got to split your decision. You've got to really pick the targets right and not go in, doubling in to a protect this time around.
But we do have an alert. It is game 3 of this round 5. Chien-Pao, Ogerpon versus that Corviknight and Dragonite pairing yet again. Maybe wanting to try to focus down, like you said, on the Dragonite straight off the bat would be great, but there is also the mind game of the protect.
That is true. You don't want to go into the Dragonite now, fall for the same.
Er hat wieder keine Musik ausgewählt. Ich werde so sauer. Okay, geht instant. Okay. Ich habe nicht gesehen, was er gedrückt hat. Oh mein Gott! Oh mein Gott! Oh my god! Oh my god!
The Corviknight somehow survived. They have a critical hit. Water terrestrialization, Sword of Ruin, and somehow this steel bird has been able to survive all of this onslaught.
That's 3 times it's been able to just hang on in the set. This is huge. Getting that tailwind off is so important, especially for that Dragonite. We saw the importance of the skill.
Das war crazy. Und deswegen spielt man Eisspinner, weil man nicht wissen will. Okay, killt der Chien-Pao diesmal. Killt er diesmal. Killt er diesmal. Oh Gott! Oh mein Gott! Crazy. Aber er geht für Body Press. Okay.
That is a huge turn here for Len and a huge advantage being the Corviknight. You think, is it going to be out?
Michi 5-0.
Nice. Takes it down, leaving the Ogerpon to get another vigil off, but this doesn't matter. The Corviknight going down now has done its job. It's set the tailwind up and it's dispatched of that Chien-Pao, making things a lot easier for this Dragonite to close out and do what it did in that game too. Make it one step further for Len to taking this set.
Yeah, and it's a good way to be able to still get that focus pressure onto the field. Sure, it is quite unfortunate you weren't able to pick up the KO onto the Chien-Pao, but at least Renzo could try to capitalize off of that in bringing the
Aktuell wieder Platz 1.
a bit earlier to perhaps try to deal a bit with this Dragonite.
Yeah, now we do see the field for Len, so he is going to have that redirection available.
Harai und Dennis sind wichtig, dass sie das holen. Das ist so geil, wenn die beide 4-1 stehen noch.
Look at Renzo's side of the field as well. The Ogerpon, the Wellspring form, has got access to Follow Me, so going to be able to pull in those attacks from the Dragonite as well. Maybe give the Gouging Fire a little bit of protection. The Amoonguss has to be careful as well around that Heat Crash, and then obviously the Breaking Swipe is something that you can utilize fully here because the Corviknight and the Mirror Armor.
Ja, Nachti hat Michi gedroht, ihn richtig durchzuschütteln.
Indeed, but if it hasn't already been hyped enough, I do believe we also have the Unite stream going ahead and watching us as well. So hello everybody, welcome in. You are in the middle of a game 3 where things
Hat Unite geradet?
Extremely on fire.
And we are going to see a terrestrialization from Len, and it will be that Dragonite going for the Terra Fairy here, removing that Dragon weakness. And if we do see a Breaking Swipe from that Gouging Fire,
Terra Fee.
immunity going into this next turn.
Oh, Burning Bulwark. Okay.
And big, but actually,
Presence ist leider noch nicht Champion, noch nicht. Beton liegt auch noch nicht. Okay, Rage Powder. Aber Terrafee hier trotzdem strong. Oh, er ist auf Ogerpon gegangen. Big.
Focusing onto the Ogerpon, trying to at least deal as much damage as you can
Big.
Not picking up quite the KO from the looks of things and the range.
That's strong.
And actually hitting 4 out of 5 times rather than 5 out of 5. But the
Und
crucial
jetzt
thing
noch
is at least it's
Rocky
in a
Heavy
2-hit
Damage.
KO range and you didn't fall down
Das
to the
ist
bait.
big.
Yeah, and now the Amoonguss doing such a great job because this Ogerpon is a pure water type. It can't ignore that Rage Powder. The Ivy
kann schon nach gar kein Dings.
Further protecting this Dragonite.
Gar kein Kontaktschutz, da war was, ne?
Going to be in a position where
Ja.
off that skill shot once again.
Zurück.
This turn
Sorry.
maybe into the Gouging Fire. Does it force the Ogerpon on Renzo's side of the field to go for that Follow Me to protect the Gouging Fire? But the Fairy Terrestrialization given complete
Follow
immunity
Me,
from
ja,
that breaking
sehe ich.
swipe.
But the important thing here
Aber Rage
is the
Powder,
redirection from
ja, Rage
Renzo's
Powder,
side.
das Scale Shot ist
Double
okay.
redirection, now one actually being followed soon
Wenn er
with the
Reaction
Amoonguss
Balance.
over on Len's
Ah ja,
side
Keul, deswegen
in
berührt er
order
nicht.
to allow this
True.
gouging fire to enable
muss sich
itself
ja
and
lohnen.
try to dispatch of the KO that it really needs to focus down onto this Amoonguss.
Das sieht gerade not bad aus für Len.
Dieses
Dragoran ist wild, ne? Dieses Dragoran sieht so cool aus. Terrafi auch so wichtig. Lebt er den? Ah, okay.
To pick up the Amoonguss, take away that option of redirection. Now the Dragonite in a position where it doesn't have that support, but Len's still got one more Pokemon left as well.
Ich hätte auch nicht gedacht, dass das so krass ist. Ich bin auch die Night Scale Shop lieber, ich feiere den übelst. Okay, da kommt Lando. Und da kommt Garchomp. Oh.
Now on Renzo's side, it does add a bit of interest here. We know that Earth Power is so powerful, boosted by the sheer force and life orb, and the Dragonite is
Len
no
noch
longer
Tailwind?
flying
Nee, ne?
type. It is now susceptible to it.
Yeah, you have to be careful if you want to launch off one of those earthquakes here with the Garchomp. You can't do so freely into the Dragonite, as we do see
Scale
that
Shot, der den nicht jetzt einfach weg.
here, maybe scouting out what Len is going to do this turn.
Oh mein Gott! Oh mein Gott! Nein, 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 nein.
More importantly, the gouging fire was completely
Oh
ignored.
mein
Big
Gott!
Crash tries to focus down on the Dragonite.
Das war ja nix!
Two-hit KO does put it in a really good stead
Oh,
right
das
now.
war so
Dragonite
stark
sees the
von
double up
Renzo,
on the
holy shit.
Landorus. Len
Das war so
clearly
stark.
identifying that this Landorus is going to be a real big issue and thorn on his
Oh mein
side,
Gott.
but we know the Dragonite still outspeeds the gouging fire.
Ich hätte gedacht,
Question
Heat Crash
is, if
tötet
there's
die
gonna be
Knight.
another
Der ist
double
auf
up,
minus
can
100.
Landorus go for the double turn?
I think you've got to go for it, I think, if you are Renzo, because if you get that double protect off, it pretty much locks the game up for you. You go for the Heat Crash again into the Dragonite, you pick it
Present
up, and then
3-2.
you've got 2 versus
Schade.
1 against that
Aber Reim
Garchomp,
holt es
which
noch.
gives
Wir
you
belieben alle.
everything in your side of the field.
Reim holt
But
es.
if you
Muss
feel
Multiscale
that
sein,
double
oder?
protect,
Ja.
chances of it
Nee,
actually
muss schon Multiscale sein.
happening,
Okay, Scale
not
Shot
gonna happen here.
killt
The
halt
Scale Shot
nicht.
straight into it. The big question is it going to be enough?
Is it going to be enough?
Nee.
Indeed, so far at this range, it seems like, except if there's any sort of critical hit that may come into play.
Nee.
Oh, it's definitely not enough.
Aber
Andres is really shrugging off all the damage
Garchomp
of all those
killt ihn hier
scales
mit
being
Dragon Claw.
shot its way. Heat Crash does finish off the job.
Aber
on the
guck mal.
Dragonite, allowing
Warte.
the Landorus
Garchomp
to
tötet jetzt
perhaps
Landorus.
be able to move, but
Wait,
once
wait, wait,
again,
wait, wait.
depends on the speed training
Und dann ist es
interactions of both these
Garchomp
Pokémon.
gegen
And
Garchomp
it is going
Fire.
to be down to the speed
So.
interaction. The Garchomp going
Pass
for the
auf.
Dragon Claw, picking
Da
up the
kommt
knockout.
jetzt Breaking
Is the
Swipe.
gouging
Aber
fire
Breaking Swipe
versus
killt
this
Garchomp nicht.
in the latter stages of this game.
Aber Garchomp
We've got a
killt.
1 versus 1.
Glaube ich dann nicht mit
Gouging
Dragon
Fire,
Claw?
not
Ich bin
really
mir nicht
in its
sicher.
spot, if I'm completely
Garchomp
honest,
macht Fire
but we've got
Shield.
the breaking swipe, so a lot
Kann er
of
nicht.
real interesting situations
Glaub ich.
going on right now.
Oh Gott.
Two-hit KO
Oh Gott.
guaranteed with a -1 of attack does mean Garchomp may or may not be
EQ?
able to pick up the KO onto the gouging fire, but at that rate,
Nee,
it
das
does
reicht nicht.
not.
So close
hätte
to picking
Crit
up
kommen
the
müssen.
knockout, but the gouging fire
Aber
coming
warte.
back with
Ist er
that
Lefty's
breaking
Protect?
swipe, taking enough damage, taking it down to -1 attack, putting it in a position now where it is going to be able to close up this game for Renzo. With one more breaking swipe, it is going to be enough.
Oh, but there's no
Oh,
protect, and it does
okay,
pick up the
damn.
KO.
Sad.
Surely there could have been an opportunity for the
Aber
protect,
starkes
get that
Match.
leftovers recovery going, but no, Renzo runs away.
Der Lando Protect.
And gets that 5th coveted
Der
win.
Lando Protect
5-0
war's.
going into the next round. An
Das war
amazing
krank.
showing from Renzo and both Len, but what
Das war
a
strong.
game for us to kick into this
Der Lando
round
Protect
5.
war
And what a way
big.
to finish as well, coming
Von
right
Renzo,
down
stark.
to the wire between these two dragon
Gutes Match, gutes Match.
The gouging fire looked in a really awkward position there. The earthquake threatening so hard, but the breaking swipe, such a useful move. And being a single target attack into that Garchomp was huge because it did just enough damage. And I think you made a good point where Len could have maybe went for that protect there, but would it have been enough? How many protects would you have needed
Lando
to get another
Protect war
earthquake off
strong.
in that situation?
It'd be tough because I feel like it would come down to a roll, surely.